My Govanen, Melunin, and Wellmess indeed. I am Arachir Galadirthan, the head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer. Welcome back to Divide and Conquer as we continue on with our faction overviews. Apologies, just moving the microphone. As we can go on with Dol Guldur. Now, just before I begin, allow me to just say, yes, last week I forgot to mention that the Aragorn RPG script is still a thing. And if you are playing as the Northern Dunedain, you just need to follow the prompts, send Aragorn to the various regions that it tells you to send him to, and at the end of it, when you arrive at Edoras, you'll get the Army of the Dead. They will then fight in 3 battles, and once they've fought in 3 battles, they will leave you. That is it. The end. The only other thing is I'm recording this on the 7th of April, and do note that for another month from now, right through till probably mid-May, so just over a month, my schedule will be all over the place, because as I have constantly said, we're in the process of buying a house. My weekends are taken up at the moment quite heavily with buying things for the house, and then when we're actually in the house, my weekends will be taken up with painting and decorating and all sorts. So the schedule is going to be really all over the place for a while. I apologise for that. That's why there's only at the moment 3 videos, even when I can manage that. Last week there was only 1. Anywho, Dol Guldur. So the size of your starting domain in your initial army. You only get 1 region, and it is Dol Guldur, as you can see there. But within it, you get a reasonable amount of sort of early game non-militia troops, so early game mainstream troops. There with Lord Kamul. Down on the southern edges of the forest is a Dunafell with a couple units of militia. Exactly the same for Chieftain Huormarath on the northern border. And far to the northeast, you have Ulairon with his little ranger contingent. So a very small starting army and the smallest possible starting domain. But do not let that fool you. The campaign will be quite simple as we move on to the second stage. Your leader, your capital unique bodyguards. Well, your leader, of course, is Kamul the Easterling. And he has a unique Easterling look, as you can see there. But not only that, he comes with his own bodyguard, the Kamul's Shadow Knights. Now, they are actually a recruitable unit. But because they are mounted cavalry, it makes him incredibly powerful. And the campaign, therefore, is likely a doddle. Now, side note, fun fact for you. I've never ever played as Dol Guldur, so I couldn't actually tell you if it's stupidly easy or stupidly hard. But I imagine it is firmly in the easy category, courtesy of Kamul's cavalry bodyguard. Adunafel, your general on the southern edge, the other Nazgul, has Castellans of Dol Guldur, as does Chieftain Huormarath, who is actually your faction heir. The Castellans are the generic, or not generic, the Castellans are the Nazgul bodyguard. So if they die and they respawn to you, which they do, they'll come back with Castellans. So those are their bodyguards. And Ulairon over on the edge, who has his own unique look, so we'll zoom in on him. Ulairon there has Kamul's Shadow Rangers. So he is a solid ranged general. And he's silver in the image, but he is... oh, sorry, the other way around. He's silver on the game map, but he's golden in the image. Although I can actually very easily change that with a simple bit of photoshopping. So those are your custom bodyguards. Now, your generic bodyguard for your orcs, you'll see in the second half of the video, is just the same Uruk bodyguard that Mordor gets. So you do kind of use the same there. Your bodyguard comes, of course, from Dol Guldur and comes from the castle of Dol Guldur, a unique building within the city itself. City, castle, fortress thing. So, Rebel expansion, you have quite a lot of options to the south and east, as you can see. You can head out into the plains of Ravanian and try and beat Dorwinion to the heartlands, to the lake in the centre. You can head south, try and mop the 2 large areas here, the Dagolad and the Burnt Plains, but I can't remember what they're called. Oh, Brownlands, of course, sorry. Scorched Plains is the one over there, and Burnt Lands is above it. Dornorhak. You can head down to those 2 and meet Mordor if you want, and Gondor and Rohan, who might favour an alliance with you, who knows. Rohan and Dol Guldur ally quite a lot, because they have so many enemies elsewhere, they don't really want to get involved with each other, so they seal the deal with an alliance. It happens quite a lot, I apologise for that. There's only so much we can do with the AI. There's only so much hand-holding before it just runs away, breaks the lead, and just darts off into the forest on its own to do weird things with cults. Now, your neighbours and your diplomacy then. So once you've mopped up the regions in Ravanian and the Brownlands, you're going to have to deal with someone, and it's likely to be the Anduin, Vale of. Those, they will deal with the Misty Mountains and yourselves as their primary enemies. But also, if you head further north, you will come into contact with Thranduil, and he will put up a fight. If the Woodland Elves as well, or the Woodland Realm as they're now known, rather than Thranduil's realm, they actually do press south into the Forest of Mirkwood, so you will have to deal with them at some point. Additionally as well, if you come up to sort of the regions of Buralge and Brown Boat, you might come into Dale, who are fond of crossing the southern side of the River Running and coming down into Ravanion here. So you're bound to run into these three at some point. And of course, if you head east, you'll knock into Dorwinion, who will be pressing in from the west. And you also have Lothlorien to contend with. Now, Lothlorien it's very unlikely that they will actually leave this 3-region start that they have. But if they do, they will give you some trouble. Your nearest actual ally, I believe, is, indeed, Mordor. And the Dark Lord of Mordor is the Pope. It doesn't actually, it's not actually a real faction, if you will. It's not playable and you can't kill them. But anyway, that's just a side note to let you know that that exists. But your only actual ally is Mordor. You're not actually allied to the Misty Mountains. And you're not allied to Rune either, nor are you allied to Isengard. So it can be a little bit of a lonely start for Dol Guldur. So your economy and buildings then, well, you're an Orc nation, so you don't get the highest tier of the castle line. You don't get the stronghold. You only get the castle, which is the middle tier. And in terms of towns, you can go all the way, I believe, actually, with towns, because you build slum-like constructions. Yes, indeed. So, no restrictions on your towns, but you can't get the highest level of castle. So you are a little restricted in that regard, but it doesn't stop you, don't worry. Your military might is impressive. In terms of guilds, you get the Fighter's Pit, which just gives you an experience bonus to troops and trains the Raider Warband and the Raider Skirmishers, which is a nice little addition. And that's it, I'm afraid. You've got your Shrines of Melkor, which give bonuses in the 3rd tier, the same for everybody else. With your blacksmiths, you only get to the 3rd tier, so you don't get the highest blacksmithing levels. And that's about it. Your Garrison Quarters is the armory and the Uruk's armory there. Again, they have a negative income bonus, but they give you your garrison. You have to build these to get a garrison. And you do also get town health, because everybody does now. You get a grog hut and a grog hall, which just gives a bonus to health and a bonus to happiness. You don't get the highest tier roads either, because of course you don't get the highest tier. You don't get that construction level. But you do get the construction reducing building, which is knocking around here somewhere. Master Builders, Building Ground, Carpenter's Hut, and a Carpenter's Guild House. That's the name of the building ones for the Orcs. So your economy is not going to be amazing, but your troops are very cheap, so you don't need an amazing economy to support them until you get to the end game when your elites kick in. And for Dol Guldur, you have human elites, so they have human prices. So it can be a bit tricky to maintain a massive army of elites, but in terms of the cheaper units, it'll be easy because they're cheap. So, scripts for Dol Guldur. There are no direct scripts, per se, that you haven't heard of. There are certainly no new ones, and the only ones that come to mind are, of course, the Nazgul. The Nazgul would respawn to Dol Guldur if they are killed. It takes about 15 turns for them to come back, I believe. That's what it was when I last checked. I didn't check before the video because life's too short. Even Khamul will also come back. However, because of the way that leadership works, and you are a Teutonic nation, so you have no family tree, if Khamul dies, he will then respawn to you 15 turns later, but he will no longer be your faction leader. You'll have to kill other people off to get him back into that position. Which, again, there's only so much with the engine that we can do, and that's one of the limitations. Would you rather have a respawn in Khamul, but he doesn't respawn as the leader? Or would you rather have him as the leader for as long as he's alive, but then he never comes back again? Like, which break to the law would you prefer? Adunafel and Huormarath will also respawn to you. Now, side note, it's not actually related to you, and you have to die for it to happen. But if indeed Dol Guldur fall, then Khamul, Huormarath, and Adunafel all go to Mordor. They respawn to Mordor, which is very cool. So there is that. However, it doesn't work the other way around. If Mordor die, your leaders will not respawn. And in fact, I believe if the ring is destroyed whilst you are Dol Guldur, which unfortunately actually is impossible, so I don't know why I'm explaining this, but if the ring is destroyed whilst you're Dol Guldur, you will lose all 3 Nazgul. But as I say, the AI can't actually destroy the ring, so ignore that. If you are playing as anyone else, so it's pertinent to Dol Guldur, but if you're playing as anybody else and Mordor is destroyed by losing the ring, Dol Guldur will lose their 3 Nazgul leaders, which might see the faction die, but then that's quite law correct, so we're not too fussed about that. I've spoken, of course, about the garrison. You will need to build this building to get a garrison. I labour that in every video because it is quite substantially different to how the garrisons used to work, although people that ask the question about it are probably the people that don't watch the videos. Anywho, so those are your scripts, I'm afraid. Very, very simple, very, very low on the ground in terms of scripts, but a fun campaign nevertheless because of your troops, as we'll get to in a moment. So major map changes around Dol Guldur. Well, Dwinberg is relatively new. Erui is incredibly new. That's a totally new faction. Karas Galathon is now the only region in Lothlorien, and the Limlight Field, where Limhir now resides, used to be Kerin Amroth. But now Karas Galathon is the only town in Lothlorien, which I think is better. And Draikhan has this eastern side of, is now the Field of Celebrant. Which, interestingly, is the location of the famous battle that Eorl came to the rescue of Gondor for, and the very reason why Rohan was given Rohan. It happened here in the Field of Celebrant. A small, nondescript place far from the borders of Gondor. The Fangorn Forest has been removed, so that's different from 1.2. Brown Boat is new. Obviously, all of the regions of Rovanium, but I've already kind of covered that. There's a lot of changes around Dol Guldur, basically. There aren't any substantial geographical changes, I don't think. There's a new river there, possibly. Is that new? No, I don't think so. It's got some crossings that may not have been there before. This river is certainly new. One of them's new. I don't know. Can't keep up with the changes. But the major changes are simply just the introduction of Brown Boat, the large changes in Rovanion, and Karas Galathon being the only town in Lothlorien. So tips and difficulty. Put Khamul at the head of your army and win the game. I think that pretty much sums that up. So, should we move on to the battle? No, I joke. No, I don't, actually. That is generally the way to win. Cavalry bodyguards are so OP. It's ridiculous. We can't balance it, but every now and then you need to have someone as a cavalry bodyguard because it's bloody good fun. You're not going to be having a hard time playing as Dol Guldur. I know I said at the beginning I don't know if it's hard or easy. It's easy. The Anduin will be very, very busy with the Misty Mountains, so you can sweep in and take their provinces without any trouble. Rohan, again, will be busy with Isengard, so you can nip in and start picking off their northern regions, no problem. If you try and rush Lothlorien, it's probably the better plan, because if you let them build up, their armies will always beat you. But they won't attack you. It's very unlikely they'll be aggressive. The real problem is trying to beat the elves to the forest, because the elves will move down south, and so will Dale. So it's a question of, do you rush them, or do you rush for Dale, or do you turtle? It's all up to you. Either way, if you want to have an easy time, put Hormarath, Adunafel, Ulairon, and Khamul into a single army and win every battle you ever fight, because you will, because they're incredible units. And it makes it a bit too easy. Anywho, that'll do for the campaign map, so now we'll move over to see what the units you get when playing as Dol Guldur. Welcome then to the battle map. So, a quick glance at Dol Guldur's roster shows you that actually they aren't really lacking in any real departments. They've got some cavalry, they've got various archer choices, and they've got an awful lot of infantry. But as we look a little deeper, as we probe deeper, as they say, we'll note that the cavalry options are rather lacking and very rare. Despite being very good, they are damned rare. But other than that, though, actually, they're not too bad. So whilst your cavalry might be a little low to the ground, everything else makes up for it. So, like most Orc factions, you have an utter trash level, the first tier of your units, which are usually garbage. And they are no different here. Rather than being called Snaga, they are called Mirkwood Stalkers, but they are Snaga in brown armour, basically. 2 defence, 1 attack, charge bonus of 1. They have poor morale response. They get a negative effect in deserts and grassland. They don't like being out of the safety of the trees of Mirkwood, where they fight with a bonus. They also like the snow. They, however, have one main purpose, and that, as many of you, I'm sure, are very aware, is to die. Their only purpose, really, is to tie up enemy units so that you can flank them, prepare archers, prepare a cavalry charge, maneuver your army into a better position. That's the purpose of the Stalkers. They cost 275 gold coins to train, which is dirt cheap. But they are supported at this early militia trash tier with some hunters. Now, they actually have a 2-missile attack, and there are 202 of them. Now, they've only got 140 meter range, which is almost as low as a javelin. But they get 16 missiles, but their accuracy is very low. They, however, will actually kill enemies. They're very good against things like berserker units that have no armor and all of their defense is defense skill. They're really good against things like that because the sheer volume of the arrows that they can fire allows the enemy allows you to bring down the enemy. So they actually are quite good, and you should, in the early game, certainly get as many of those as you can. Where possible, though, you should be using Dol Guldur archers. But so those are your trash. Then we come on to your mainstream before the barracks event, which actually is quite full, and certainly your most numerous line or tier. So we'll start at the edge. These are the Goblin Headhunters. They were designed to be a javelin unit that lowered the morale of the enemy units, but we were unfortunately unable to make the javelin and morale effects marry up. So they now are just good javelin troops. They can hide anywhere, they get a bonus against mounts, excellent stamina, their defense is 11, which is quite good. Their missile attack is 7, which is not the best, but it's not bad either. Now they only come from a forest region, but they are not too bad. They're the only javelin unit that you... oh no, they're supported by the scouts, sorry. So they're one of 2 javelin units you get, and they're both at this earlier tier. Their range is only 55 meters, so you're going to get 3 missiles. They get, as I say, a bonus against mounts, though, but they require a forest region. They only come from forests. So those are the Headhunters. Next along, we have the Guldur scouts, as I say. I should also say that Guldur has been given a new look. Hummingbird didn't... He's tinkered with the designs, but he didn't create them himself. They came from... another mod, I can't remember whose, and I'm terribly sorry for that. But they are just tweaks on the Mordor design so that they stand out a little bit more. They no longer carbon copies. And they look very good, I think. The quality of them has gone up quite substantially. So very good looking indeed. And as I say, Hummingbird did tweak them. So there is credit to be had there, but I can't remember where we got them from. Anyway, the Guldur Scouts. They're just a worse version of your Headhunters, but they are available everywhere. Their defense is only 6 compared to the 11 of the Headhunters. Their missile attack is 5, their melee attack is 4, their charge bonus is 3. Interestingly, these 2 units cost exactly the same amount, but that is primarily because the Headhunters are far rarer and they only come from a few places, and it helps emphasise the fact that Guldur are more about quantity over quality. Supporting them are your real mainstream unit, the Guldur Host. They have an 8 defense, which is quite good. This is the tier that will actually start doing damage. They attack with an attack skill of 5 and charge bonus of 3. They have average morale and average morale response. Do note, always, in all cases, orcs are not known for their morale, and they will break very easily if they do not have a commander. And by that I mean an actual general. A captain won't do. So these are the Orc Molars. They are a unit borrowed from Mordor. They're effective against armor with a 5 attack and a 6 charge bonus, which makes them deadly flanking troops. They're not very good when they lose their charge bonus, though. 5 attacks okay, and with the effective against armor, it boosts it up, but their defense is only 5, and 3 of that is armor, 2 defense skill, no shield. So they die very easily to arrow fire, as I've already mentioned, and they will just die quite easily anyway, because 5 defense isn't very good. Average morale again. Finally, at this tier, on foot, are the Orc Raiders. Now, the Orc Raiders kind of fill the gap between militia and mainstream, as you can see, with a defense of only 4 and attack of 2. They are half as good as the Guldur Host, and they cost roughly half. It's actually a little over half, more along the lines of sort of 60%. But they are, again, just... They're trash, ideally designed to die, but they will actually take some people with them, whereas the Mirkwood Stalkers... They won't. They just won't take many people with them. They will just simply die. And then you get a dedicated archer this time. I say, well, this unit is a dedicated archer, but they're not going to kill that many. But the archers actually will. Their missile attack is 3. Their range is better. Their missiles are better. Their accuracy is higher, so they will kill more enemies. Once they stop firing, though, they are as bad as the Orc Raiders and should be kept out of melee at all costs. You also, however, get the Wargs at this tier to support your army in the fight against the Free Peoples. The Wargs are, they're actually camels. I think this is the first time we've had a Warg unit, so I can go into the spiel. They look like Wargs and they look like wolves, but they are actually camels. So they get a bonus against horses automatically. That's built into camels. So they scare horses, which means they lower the morale of horse units around them. Their attack is 10, which is really very aggressive. And their charge bonus is 7, which is quite nice. And their defense is only 11. Now, I say that because they're not actually that great at charging enemy units, but they are very aggressive once they get into the fight. But do note that cavalry should be kept out of prolonged melee wherever possible, but they will actually kill quite a lot of people. They're really aggressive. Very good at charging a unit to break them, because they'll charge with that charge bonus and a high attack, doing a lot of damage immediately, causing the enemy to run, which is what all cavalry really is for, but the Wargs just do it a little bit better. And if they do get into a fight with other cavalry, that's where they then do normally shine with their high attack. Although in my experience, wargs often lose to almost all cavalry. I don't know why. Whilst camels scare horses, they also suffer considerably in melee against normal units, and wargs have inherited that trait. I can't tell you for why, but to me it always seems like wargs are trash and they die really easily. Yeah, but if they're being controlled by a human, they probably will do better. So then the barracks event hits, and we come to the units you get after it. Well, the entrance to this are the Mirkwood Hooks.
Alright, you ready?
They are not just clones of Sauron's Uruks nor Isenguards. They have their own little look, but they form the same role. They're just dedicated mainline infantry. A nice defense of 16, an attack of 9, charges 3, so they're better in holding the line than they are attacking. But they're supported by a pike unit, the Mirkwood Uruk Pikes, who also have voices from the Angmar faction of Battle of Middle-earth, which is good, separates them out a little bit. They have a 12 defense, a 3 attack and a 5 charge. Remember, they're pikes. They benefit from the super OP pike attack animation, which means that their low attack is actually much higher. It's difficult to come up with an exact kind of relationship between the pike animation and their attack stat. But in my mind, I've always kind of thought of it as 3 times what the attack says. That's how I've always thought of it. There is no empirical evidence to back up that claim. It's just mentally how I factor in the OP animation. So when you see a pike unit, triple the attack, and that's normally about where on par it actually is with the pike animation in there as well. So very, very solid unit. The bonus that you always get with Uruk and Orc units is they have a large number of soldiers for their battalion. They often have more men per battalion at each tier than equivalent human units do. And of course elves and dwarves who have less anyway. So that's the first units you're going to get when you enter this new tier. You will actually get most of these units all in one go, but I've broken them up into the tiers that they're actually in just to make it, you can see the progression. But when we now come to the humans, the Khamul's units. Khamul's units are all humans. So you've got Shadow Guard, you've got Shadow Rangers, Shadow Bows, and Shadow Knights. And they're all men of the East, Easterlings, men of Arun, who have followed Khamul, who is known to be an Easterling, and they fight with him in his quasi-death. The Shadow Guard are halberdiers, not pikemen. So they get a somewhat OP animation, but nowhere near as good as the pike animation. But they get a bonus against armor, they inspire nearby troops, which is nice, and they get a bonus against cavalry. But that is all mounted units. So Oliphants, big great beasts, Sauron, the Balrog, Ents, any camels, wargs, horses. They get a bonus against anything that is a beast or mounted, which is nice. Their defense is 23, which is very good. Their attack is 7 and their charge is 7. They are really good. They're one of your best units, discounting the kind of niche units at the top here. Which is why they're in the elite tier. But they haven't made it to the Uber tier because their defense isn't quite up to par. To be Uber, you need to be a 28 or above, really. And you need to have some other thing that defines you. Whereas they're just mainstream halberdiers in an elite tier. So the 2 archer units that you get here then, these are an interesting one to categorise because the Shadow Rangers have a missile attack of 6. And they can use sharpened stakes, they're your stake unit. They have poison arrows that reduce the morale of the enemy units. They have very high accuracy, 250 meter range and 32 missiles, but the Shadow Bows, who only have a 5 missile attack, have 4 more defense and 1 more melee attack. So the Rangers are much better archers, but the Shadow Bows are better if the enemy arrives at them. They also don't have as high an accuracy, they have less range and less missiles. So they're 2 interesting units. The Rangers are dedicated Rangers and they have morale reducing arrows. And the Shadow Bows are solid archers, they really are. But if the enemy arrives at these 2 units, the Shadow Bows will put up much more of a fight. But the Rangers will kill more, which is why I've put them in the same sort of tier, because the melee stats of the Bows makes up for the loss that they suffer in ranged combat compared to the Rangers. Ah, that was a mouthful. We got there in the end. I missed it, but there you are. Do note as well that actually the Dol Guldur archers also reduce morale. So the archers, the Dol Guldur archers and the Shadow Rangers both reduce morale. The Shadow Bows, however, do not. So then we come to this Uber tier, and the first thing we're going to look at are the Castellans, and what we're going to do is go absolutely quiet and listen to them talk, because it's awesome. Oh, they say march when you move them. There we are. They actually sound like quasi-ghost beings. I've used that word twice in this video now, too many times. They're really cool. Castellans are formidable warriors. A 10 attack, 27 defense. Their charge isn't that great. Their armor is 17 though, so do watch out. Armor-piercing units will have a field day with these guys. But the basic premise behind these Castellans in Divide and Conquer is that they're kind of like enchanted armor suits. So there's like spirits within them is what we've gone for, which is why they sound all mystical when you click on them, and it's why their armor is so high, because they basically are just walking suits of armor. They only come from Dol Guldur, as you saw at the bottom, though. Their morale is excellent and locked, so they won't run away. They only suffer a negative effect in the desert. They're just really good infantry, And the fact that their morale is quite high to begin with and locked means that they are excellent at holding the line. Which is why Adunafel and Hormarath are OP generals. But then also at the infantry tier, and I do use that properly, I suppose I'll have to explain it, as this is the first time we've had trolls crop up. Trolls. Trolls are infantry. This means they can climb siege ladders, climb siege towers, operate siege rams. They can mount walls. They will suffer negative effects. Their morale will be suffered. Well, they'll suffer any effect that affects infantry. I don't actually think there are any, but there we are. They are infantry. This also means that sharpened stakes and pikes and spear units have no bonus against them. Sorry, I was going to say boost. They have no bonus against them. They are not brought down easily by pike units. Okay? Now, there are many reasons for why they are not cavalry. And chief amongst them is animation concerns, but also there's a very categorical reason why. If they were to be cavalry, you would have to make it either so that they were the rider or they were the horse. If they were the horse, you would then they would attack enemies, and actually nothing would happen. No one would attack around them. No, actually, this is a complete lie, because Sauron is an elephant and he attacks things. Anyway, there's a very good reason by the Third Age team, and it escapes my brain now as to why they are not elephants and why they are infantry. So trolls are infantry. Trolls are trolls. I mean, they are 31 defense, 32 attack. They attack an area, so they hit more than one unit in one go. They frighten nearby enemy infantry. They may charge without orders. They only come from a few regions, though. They only come from regions that have the troll hidden resource. So if you can't build the troll grounds, it's not a bug. It's because they are only actually select regions that you can recruit them in. But the list is quite lengthy, so we didn't put a restriction here. They're just not available everywhere. They get very good morale, and it's locked, and they get a bonus against mounts. So those are your trolls. And then finally, at this Uber tier, before we get to the two last one, are the Shadow Knights. The courtesy of Third Age Reforged, they look very cool, I think. I think they are easily Dol Guldur's best looking unit now. Look at the detail on his armour there. Wow, you can really see it when you go up to this 1440p malarkey. Anywho, so these are the Shadow Knights. These are the bodyguard of Khamul, but they're also available as a recruitable unit, but again, they require Dol Guldur. So 2 of your units require Dol Guldur. 1 of your units requires any region that is listed as forest, and then the trolls are only available in certain locations. The Shadow Knights cost in at 1,250, and as you'll note, through all the human/spirit units, they're very expensive compared with the Orcs and Uruk units, who are dirt cheap. Oh, the Marauders are 900, though. The Shadow Knights have a 30 defense, a 10 attack with a 10 charge. Absolutely beastly. They get a bonus against camels and wargs, but not horses. So they're very good if you wish to turn on any evil nation, because those are the only people that get camels and wargs. But that's interesting to note. So they're just very, very good. But they're expensive, they're late game, and they only come from one region. Because Dol Guldur are not a cavalry faction, so your cavalry is rare and hard to get. Finally, before we do the bodyguard, who's always last, you also get troll catapults. Aha! I've just worked out the #1 reason why trolls are infantry, because infantry has to man siege equipment. And so if trolls were elephants or cavalry, they would not be able to mount the catapults. And I believe the Third Age Total War team felt that the troll catapults were so iconic they should be a thing. And they could only do that if they are infantry. So, trolls are infantry. Anyway, a troll catapult is just a very good catapult in itself. And then once it's done, you get a unit of trolls to fight the enemy with, which makes them very, very good. Now, there are some strange animation bugs with the trolls acting as catapult crew. As you may have seen watching these two, some of their heads pop around like that gentleman's just there. But they do actually operate the equipment easily, as you saw from the last video, so they are useful. They're excellent siege equipment if you can get them, but they're costly. Damn, are they costly. And then finally, as I said, your bodyguard unit are the Uruk Bodyguard. So anyone that isn't a Nazgul will come with this bodyguard. They're actually quite good now, though. They're effective against armor with an 8 attack and an 18 defense. So they will hold up. They're not just going to die as they used to do before. They will be one of your best units in your army for some time as well, because of the effective against armor and their solid stats. So that is your army. Let's give it all over to the AI and take it away. So this one will be very, very easy to guess who's up next, because if we just take a quick scan over the army that's approaching us, you'll note a sizable amount of blue and white. So there's only really one of two options. And noting as well that they've got a particular type of siege unit, I imagine most of you have already guessed who we are up against. And I'm keeping the naming conventions the same as well. So if you haven't guessed it with all three of those clues, it is, of course, the greatest nation in Divide and Conquer. The nation for whom you should all thank the fact that Divide and Conquer still exists are the Principality of Dol Amroth. And boy, do they look good. And they're going to absolutely massacre us, by the way, as they always do. Not as they always do, but I always only choose one unit from one of every unit type, and I don't bother upgrading them or anything. Whereas the AIs, the army I always pick for the other side, they get 30,000 gold coins, and I just do use the autofill option. And as you might imagine, then all of these units have armor upgrades, weapon upgrades. They've got like 9 experience, which is why in these little show battles I always die. Ah, the Knights of the Silver Swan. Glorious. Charging with the rain as the trebuchet fire reeks across the battlefield, taking trolls down as it goes. Oh, interesting. The White Knights of Atheland have put away their bows and charged into the Shadow Rangers. Oh, they look cool. Very nice. Oh, the troll catapults are turning on their own army. Fire out on the edge there. Oh, the Shadow Knights have made play with some more White Knights. Oh, the wargs are with them as well, because you can hear them dying. They sound like puppies getting crushed. It's terribly sad. Our army is already routing. The Seaward Spearmen heading in. Haven Guard charging through the centre. The glory of Dol Amroth reigns on this map. Oh, and the Knights of the Silver Swan finally charging in. Guldur host doesn't stand a chance as more trebuchet bolts fly through the sky, taking down more Dol Amrothians than they do orcs, but there we are. Such a rare unit. You rarely see the trebuchet, but it's there. Dol Amroth Gondor and the Northern Dunedain get the trebuchet. There wasn't enough room in the Northern Dunedain roster to put it in there, and there probably won't be in the Dol Amroth roster either, I'm afraid. But, oh look, they're loading the catapults whilst moving them. That's a new skill. There's Amrothian archers. They are massacring us. But there we are. That is Dol Guldur. So I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy the new units. I hope that, again, the improved graphics of these videos comes through. Although it doesn't like the battles as much. It's a bit jarry, but you can't win them all. And I hope you look forward to Dol Amroth. And this week, again, bringing it back to the present, the 7th of April. This week I do actually hope to do 2 more Umbar videos, or Ardenayim. And when I can settle everything down, we'll have a proper review of the channel and start some new campaigns. But in the meantime, do stick with it while I just fill this gap of house moving. The house move should have been going much quicker, but unfortunately the person who I'm buying the house off of has taken ages to return the paperwork he needed to return. I know many of you aren't interested in that, but I'm just giving you a little update as to why we're a month in and so far nothing has happened. So it might, who knows how long it will take. Anywho, that's Dol Guldur, and I hope you look forward to Dol Amroth, and until we speak again, Navar Naden Pedimad Melunin, and farewell.